Hey everyone. So, all that buzz that's going around about AI is like taking over the world.
Right.
Well, today we're going to dive deep into whether it's coming for your keyboard specifically, especially if you happen to be a software developer.
Yeah. And we're not just like speculating here.
Right.
We're actually looking at a really fascinating research paper
Okay.
that just came out this month, September 2024. So hot off the presses,
Okay.
that explores the real world impact of AI tools
Okay.
on developers like you.
Yeah, this isn't some theoretical mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
This study involved thousands of developers
It did.
from some seriously big names,
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft, Accenture,
Mm-hmm.
even a top secret Fortune 100 electronics company.
Yeah, they wouldn't tell us who they were, which is always fun
Really?
when you're doing the research.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But almost 5,000 developers, to be precise.
Wow.
And they weren't just messing around in a lab. These guys were using GitHub Copilot,
Okay.
which is this AI coding tool
Right.
that everybody's talking about.
Okay. For those of us who haven't been hanging out in the GitHub universe,
Sure.
what exactly is this Copilot thing?
Yeah.
Is it some sort of coding robot overlord?
It's funny because when we first saw the name, we were like, ooh, is this going to be scary? No, not quite an overlord.
Okay.
Think of it like this. Imagine you have this super smart coding buddy
Okay.
who has read every line of code ever written.
Okay.
That's basically what generative AI is.
Right.
It learns from massive amounts of data, in this case code, and then it can generate new code, it can suggest completions, it can even write entire functions for you based on what you tell it to do.
Okay. That's kind of blowing my mind.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
So GitHub Copilot is basically like having an AI whisperer in your ear, helping you write code faster and maybe even better.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. And what's really cool about this research is that they didn't just ask developers hey, do you think this tool is helpful or whatever?
Right, right.
They actually tracked their work.
Oh, wow.
So they looked at things like how often are they updating their code, how quickly are they finishing tasks, even down to how often their code compiles successfully,
Really?
which if you're a developer, that tells you a lot about the quality of the code.
They can track how often your code compiles.
They can, yeah.
That's like the digital equivalent of peering over your shoulder while you're working.
It is a little bit, but it's all about getting those objective measurements, right? So
Right.
they tracked all this over several weeks, so it's not just a snapshot in time. It's really comprehensive data.
So we've got thousands of developers.
Yeah.
We've got cutting-edge AI. We've got some serious data crunching happening here.
Mm-hmm.
What'd they find? Was Copilot the coding miracle everyone's hoping for?
Well, get this. Developers using Copilot were cranking out a whopping 26% more tasks every single week
Wow.
compared to those who weren't.
Okay.
And these researchers made sure to, cross their T's and dot their I's. These results were legit, not just some statistical fluke.
Hold up. 26% more tasks. That's insane. Are we talking like coding robots taking over the world here?
Not quite robots, but it is significant.
Right.
But before we jump to any conclusions, let's dig into what that 26% actually means.
Yeah, because is it just about speed? Are
Yeah.
they just coding faster or are they actually getting more done?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
And that's where this research, I think, gets really interesting.
Okay.
They didn't just look at the number of tasks.
Right.
They dug into, the nitty-gritty of the code itself.
Oh, wow.
So they looked at things like code updates, which are a good indicator of how much actual progress is being made.
Okay.
And those successful code builds that we talked about earlier. And guess what?
Don't leave me hanging. What did they find?
The data suggests that developers using Copilot weren't just working faster. They were also producing more output and higher quality output in the same amount of time.
Okay, so AI isn't just making us faster. It's actually helping us be more productive overall,
It seems that way. Yeah.
which is a game changer.
Huge. Yeah.
But here's where I'm really curious. The study found that Copilot didn't have the same impact on everyone.
It didn't. Yeah.
Some developers were seeing bigger benefits than others,
Right.
and I got to know why.
Yeah. And it's fascinating. It turns out that the developers who saw the most dramatic productivity boost from Copilot were actually the less experienced ones.
Wait, so the newbies are out coding the veterans thanks to AI?
In a way, yes.
Tell me more.
So, well, it makes sense when you think about it, right?
Okay,
For someone who's still learning the ropes of software development,
right.
having access to this, like, vast database of coding knowledge and best practices
Yeah.
right at their
Right at
fingertips
their fingertips, yeah.
is huge.
It's like having a cheat sheet for coding.
It is.
But it's not cheating. It's AI.
Exactly.
It's like totally legit.
And that's what's so exciting about this, I think, is that it suggests that AI tools like Copilot have the potential to really accelerate the learning curve for new developers,
Right.
which could have huge implications for the future of the field.
That's a whole other can of worms we'll have to open later.
For sure.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, I want to make sure I'm connecting the dots here.
Yeah.
So far, we've learned that AI can help developers, especially less experienced ones, work faster and produce better code.
Yeah.
Now, I'm dying to know what else this research uncovered, especially about how those seasoned developers are reacting to all of this.
Oh, you're going to love this. It turns out that a bunch of the developers, even when they were given free access to Copilot, they just, like, didn't use it.
Whoa, seriously.
Yeah.
They had this potentially game-changing tool just sitting there, and they didn't even want to try it. That's wild.
It is kind of wild.
Why wouldn't they at least give it a shot?
I think it's like when you get a fancy new phone,
Okay.
but you stick to using your old one
Right.
because it's familiar, right?
Yeah.
We humans, we're creatures of habit,
Totally.
even when it comes to tech.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm totally guilty of that.
Right.
But still, we're talking about their work here.
Right.
You'd think they'd be all over something that could make their lives easier.
You'd think so, but remember, change can be hard,
True.
especially when you're already good at what you do.
That's fair.
Some developers, they might be skeptical about relying too much on AI. They might be worried about losing their edge
Okay.
or not fully understanding how the AI is making decisions.
Yeah, it's like trusting a GPS blindly without knowing the route yourself.
Totally.
You want to be sure you can still navigate if the tech fails.
Exactly. And for some developers, coding is more than just a job, right?
Right.
It's a craft.
Yeah.
They take pride in writing every line of code themselves.
That makes sense. It's like the difference between a chef who meticulously prepares a meal from scratch and someone who just pops a frozen dinner in the microwave.
That's a great analogy. And then, of course, you have the developers out there who are, perfectly happy with their current workflow.
Right, yeah.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Right. But even if some developers are hesitant, it seems like the writing's on the wall here.
Mm.
AI is changing the game, whether we're ready for it or not.
Absolutely. And I think this research highlights a really important point.
Okay.
It's not about AI replacing developers.
Okay.
It's about AI augmenting their abilities, helping them to work smarter, not harder.
So it's less about like humans versus machines and more about humans working alongside machines.
Yes.
A dynamic duo kind of situation.
Exactly.
I like it.
And that's where things get really interesting because if even experienced developers are hesitant to embrace AI,
Right.
it begs the question, what does this mean for the future of work?
Yeah.
Not just in software development, but in all kinds of fields.
That's a great question.
Right.
And I think it's one that we all need to be thinking about. Like, how do we adapt to a world where AI is becoming more and more integrated into our work lives?
Well, for starters, I think we need to be willing to adapt ourselves and embrace this idea of lifelong learning.
Right.
The skills that are in demand today might not be the same ones that are needed 5 or 10 years from now.
So it's not just about learning to code, it's about learning how to learn.
Yes.
That's kind of meta.
It is a bit meta, isn't it? But it's true.
Yeah.
We need to be adaptable, curious, and willing to step outside of our comfort zones a little bit.
That sounds like good advice for life in general.
It does, doesn't it?
But let's bring it back to the research here.
Okay.
We've talked about the impact of AI on developers.
Right.
But what about the rest of us?
Okay.
What are the big takeaways here?
I think one of the most important takeaways is that AI has the potential to really level the playing field, especially in fields that require really specialized knowledge and skills.
So like with those less experienced developers who saw those huge productivity gains.
Exactly. AI can give people a leg up, providing access to information and tools that might have been out of reach before.
Right.
But it also highlights, I think, the importance of being adaptable
Okay.
and open to new ways of working, no matter what your experience level is.
That's a really powerful message.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, if AI can have such a big impact on something as technical as software development,
Yeah.
what other fields are ripe for disruption?
Oh, I think the possibilities are practically endless.
Right.
We're already seeing AI making waves in healthcare, finance, education, you name it. But here's the thing.
It feels like we're only scratching the surface here.
This research has given us a really fascinating glimpse, I think, into the future of work, where AI isn't just a tool, it's more like a collaborator, you know?
Okay.
But here's the thing, it's not about like becoming an AI expert overnight.
Right.
It's about learning how to work effectively alongside these
So
tools.
it's less about competing with the machines and more about figuring out how to, like, dance with them.
Exactly. And to your point earlier about learning how to learn,
Right.
that's what this is all about.
Yes.
Being curious, being adaptable, being willing to kind of like roll with the punches as these technologies evolve.
So you're saying that AI isn't going to replace us, it's going to amplify what we're already good at.
I think so.
And that's not just for developers, that's for everyone, right?
That's for everyone. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, this deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too. And honestly, that's the beauty of all this, isn't it? We're all figuring this out together.
Well said. A huge thank you to our listeners for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI and software development.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
And remember, whether you're out there coding the next big app or just trying to stay ahead of the curve, the most important skill you can have is a willingness to learn and adapt.
Couldn't agree more.
Until next time, keep those brains churning.